Just sing with me. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Giridhari ki jai. So thank you again for coming. Tonight we're going to start, since it's so close to Christmas, one day late, with the great commandment of Jesus Christ. Some of you may know. He was asked, "O teacher, which is the greatest?" This is Matthew 22:36-40. "Which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." So I'd like to illustrate how these commandments are practically the life and soul of Bhakti Yoga. This is also the main teaching of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the great acharyas, the great teachers who follow him. And so I'd like to begin reading a little bit from the Nectar of Devotion. Many of you are familiar with this book. This book was translated by Srila Prabhupada from Rupa Goswami's, Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which means the ocean of Bhakti Rasa. Bhakti Rasa is the pleasure that comes from serving Krishna in love and devotion. And it's called an ocean because it really has no limits. Whereas we'll find that material pleasure, as we all know, is limited by time and our very fragile bodies and minds. So this is from the preface to this book, and this is one of the most famous passages in the book. Srila Prabhupada writes, "The basic principle of the living condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone. No one can live without loving someone else. This propensity is present in every living being. Even an animal, like a tiger, has this loving propensity, at least in a dormant stage, and it is certainly present in the human beings. The missing point, however, is where to repose our love so that everyone can become happy. At the present moment, human society teaches one to love his country or family or his personal self, but there is no information where to repose the loving propensity so that everyone can become happy. This missing point is Krishna. And the Nectar of Devotion teaches us how to stimulate our original love for Krishna and how to be situated in that position where we can enjoy our blissful life. In the primary stage, a child loves his parents, then his brothers and sisters, and as he daily grows up, he begins to love his family, his society, community, country, nation, or even the whole of human society. But the loving propensity is not satisfied even by loving all human society. That loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the supreme beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. This theme is the sum and substance of the Nectar of Devotion, which teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows. Now this word mellow was given a new meaning by Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If you look it up in a dictionary, you won't find a noun under mellow. It'll be just an adjective, which means very smooth, whatever, tasty. So mellow is, maybe it'll enter the dictionary soon because there's millions of these books being translated and distributed and read. But what mellow is, this rasa. The rasa, we experience some of that, even on the material side. The feeling, the pleasure that comes, say, from a mother loving the child loving the mother, familiar with that. It's ineffable. It's not something you can weigh, it's not something you can measure, but it's very much there and exists. So that's a reflection. That's a little hint of the mellows or the rasas that can be experienced with Krishna, which don't diminish and are eternal. And you can see how the material mellows are very much limited by time and so forth. But that's what the mellow is. Transcendental mellows. Our loving propensity expands just as a vibration of light or air expands, but we don't know where it ends. The Nectar of Devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. Love thy neighbor. In other words, this. And you notice he said neighbor. Aren't the cows our neighbors also? Right? All living entities. We have failed to create peace and harmony in human society, even by such great attempts as the United Nations, because we don't know the right method. The method is very simple, but one has to understand it with a cool head. The Nectar of Devotion teaches all persons how to perform the simple and natural method of loving Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we learn how to love Krishna, then it is very easy to immediately and simultaneously love every living being. It is like pouring water on the root of a tree or supplying food to one's stomach. The method of pouring water on the root of a tree or supplying food to the stomach is universally scientific and practical, as every one of us has experienced. Everyone knows well that when we eat something, or in other words, when we put food in the stomach, the energy created by such action is immediately distributed throughout the whole body. Similarly, when we pour water on the root, the energy thus created is immediately distributed throughout the entirety of even the largest tree. It is not possible to water the tree part by part, nor is it possible to feed the different parts of the body separately. The Nectar of Devotion will teach us how to turn the one switch that will immediately brighten everything, everywhere. One who does not know this method is missing the point of life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So in the course of this preface, Srila Prabhupada talked about the science of bhakti, which he would always emphasize, that it's not some sentiment, it's not some emotional something. It's actually a science. And that means that if we follow the prescribed method that has been handed down and tried and true, then we'll also get the result. So the books that Srila Prabhupada translated and gave us, they all deal ultimately with this goal of awakening our original love for God, for Krishna. And through that love, awakening our love for everyone. And this covers the Great Commandment, because that's exactly what he says. It says, love your neighbor as yourself. So how is that possible? How does that actually work? Well, first of all, we should contemplate the nature of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. and who he is, and what he did when he came to America, to the world, actually. So we learn in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, right at the beginning, that Lord Chaitanya is none other than Krishna. Yadadvaitam Brahmo Panasaditadapyasadanubha. The third verse in the whole book, right in the first chapter, explains that the Brahman effulgence, this white light with no details, which is the first manifestation, or the preliminary manifestation of the Absolute Truth, that's nothing but the effulgence of his body, just as we say in Lord Krishna, we know from the Brahma Samhita. The Super Soul is in his expansion, and he is himself Bhagavan, full with 6 opulences. This is right at the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This verse, I think, was written by Srup Damodar Goswami, one of his intimate associates. So, why did Krishna come again after 5,000 years or 4,500 years and manifest in this different form? He has a golden complexion. He's not in the role of a great prince, and he's not showing so many powers, at least initially. And what was the reason? So that's explained in the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then expanded upon in the first dozen chapters of the book. So the idea is that, and it all comes back to this Bhakti Rasa, is that Lord Krishna, this is the description in the Shastra, that he's in the spiritual world in Dwarka. And it's either the floor, which is they painted, or there's a very mirror-like pillar that he looked in. He saw his reflection of his own beauty, his own self. He saw himself, and he was astounded by his own beauty and his own attraction. He said, "Who has such great beauty as this?" You know, and my mind hankers to enjoy it, but I can't, because I'm not in a position. I have to get in a position of Srimati Radharani in order to appreciate my own qualities. And I can't appreciate how she's loving me. The pleasure that she enjoys from loving me and serving me is much more than I'm getting from being served. So he wanted to take her position. This is his own internal reason. Now at the same time, there's an external reason, and that is to spread the Sankirtan movement. To give the residents of Kali Yuga, of which we are all members, a chance to attain the highest goal of life. Right at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavat Purana, it's describing how this age is so difficult to make progress in yoga, which is really the purpose of human life, is to not just be absorbed in the dualities of sense gratification and taking birth again and again and coming to the human form and losing it. This is what's been going on since time immemorial. So it says that Prayanalpayashak sabya kalavasmin yugena manda samanda matayo manda bhagyayu padrita. That in this age, for the most part, nobody lives very long. 100 years at maximum. And who really lives 100 years? And even if you do, most people aren't interested in these most important topics. Who am I? Where did everything come from? What is this world? Is there a God? If so, how can I know him? How can I get free from the bondage of birth, old age, disease, and death? These questions don't arise. People are so busy just trying to survive in this world and doing all these things. So they're manda. Manda means lazy in the matter of spiritual inquiry. And if they happen to be interested, they'll probably be misguided. There's so many cheaters and charlatans ready to pretend to be God and take your money and go away, as Prabhupada says. So in this way, they're unfortunate. So how to make these unfortunate, short-lived residents of Kali Yuga fortunate? So Lord Chaitanya came, Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya, and he propagated this method of Sankirtan. At the very end of the Bhagavatam, we hear a verse, after a long description of the more difficulties of this Kali Yuga. It says, Kali dosha nidhe rajan, O king, Shukadev speaking to King Parikshit. This Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults. We just heard some of them in the previous chapter. Kali nidra asti eko mahadguna, but there's one very special good quality in this age. Kirtanareva Krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajet. By just chanting the holy name of Krishna, but one has to do it under proper guidance, but one can get completely free from the evils of this age. It negates the evils of the age. Mukta Sangha. You get free, liberated from the attachments and from the bad reactions of previous bad association. And then what? Param Vrajet. You go back to the spiritual world. Now, Prabhupada's immortal phrase, which he invented, I mean, I don't think it was used by any of the other acharyas before him, go back home, back to Godhead. Going back home, back to Godhead. There's so much meaning in there. First of all, the understanding is that's where we came from. We've all left. We're exiles here. This is not our home, this material world. That's why we can never find a real peaceful situation. You may find something that looks kind of peaceful and secure for some time, but then suddenly there's this huge pandemic all over the world. Then what happens to your sense of safety and security? Everyone has so much anxiety from this because it's ruining everything. It's uprooting and disturbing every illusion of security. So, and even if it happens to be there's no pandemic, there's still time. Time is pushing you forward, so that eventually you have to leave this body, and you have so many things in relation to the body that you think are what is making you happy and secure, but they can't be. It's like we're in the ocean here. The ocean's right here. You go out in a boat, right? I remember a few years ago, you remember the cruise boats, because the cruise boats turned into big pandemic super spreaders. But before that, there was one that got on a shoal and it actually started sinking, and they had to get people off the boat and everything. Can you imagine? You pay all that money to go on this cruise boat and be in an idyllic situation, right? But what happens? You know, danger is there at every step, at every movement of the propeller. So there is no place in this material world that is secure. There's a famous verse that has one line Prabhupada would love to quote. Padam padam yad vibadam natesham. Padam padam means, vibadam means danger at every step. I have a very realized experience of that. You may notice I'm wearing a little brace here and I'm not sitting cross-legged. I had a serious sprain. I was taking my evening walk and I took a little wrong step and I got into a little ditch by the sidewalk, and this has been almost 2 months now with this thing. So there's no place of security or happiness in this world. There's only the illusion of it. There's the reflection of it. So Lord Chaitanya came to give this process of Sankirtan, of Harinam Sankirtan, which is designed to give us a means. It doesn't matter who you are, what your background is. You don't have to be a Brahmin, man, woman, old, young, any ethnic group. Doesn't matter. Everyone can chant and should chant. And what is the result? The result is what is a Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem Sadhya Kabunoi Shabanadi Shuddha Chitte Koreye Udoi. Notice he used the word prem there. Prema is pure love for God. This is the origin of which all our attempts to love here are as a reflection. Unfortunately, a perverted reflection. So he's saying that this eternal perfection of love for Krishna, which opens up the floodgates of unlimited, ever-expanding bliss, as we are told again and again by our acharyas. Nitya Siddha Sadhya Kabunoi. It's not something artificial to bring that you have to get. It's already there. It's there in everyone's heart. It has always been there, but it's covered. So how do we uncover it? Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte. Shuddha Chitte means purification of the consciousness. By the process, beginning with hearing the holy name, hearing the Shastra, hearing the words of the great acharyas, hearing Srila Prabhupada's kirtan, which has a special wonderful effect because of the purity. And the adi means chanting, remembering, serving, all of the 9 processes of devotional service. Shuddha Chitte, this is the key phrase, purifies the heart, the consciousness. Kareye udoi. And that love naturally awakens at a certain point, progressively. And that has been described in great detail in this book, Nectar of Devotion. I highly recommend it. Any of you who don't have it, should be available in the bookstore, or we make sure you can get one. And this is where the science of bhakti comes in. Rupa Goswami and his brother, they were very intelligent. They were Brahmins, born in Brahmin family, Saraswat Brahmins. And but they were in Bengal, and the area where they living, they came under the control of Nawab Hussain Shah. So he actually coerced them into becoming his right and left hand man. He knew that if they were in the government, then it would be much easier to rule the people. So one was the finance minister, and one was the prime minister. Prime minister was his elder brother, and Rupa Goswami was the finance minister. So Lord Chaitanya came there to that town, Ram Keli, I believe it was, and they could immediately recognize, oh, this is incarnation of God. This is Lord Chaitanya. So they offered their obeisances, and they spoke this famous verse, again pertinent to our subject. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvijaya Namaha. We used to sing this on Sankirtan. Remember Guru Krishna? We used to sing this one. So they say, we offer our obeisances. Mahavadanyaya, the most munificent, the most generous avatar of Krishna. Mahavadanyaya. Why? Krishna Prema Padayate. Because he's giving out this Krishna Prem, this love of Krishna that Jesus Christ says we should try to get, love of God. Krishnaya, he's Krishna himself, under the name Krishna Chaitanya. Gaura Tujay, with a golden complexion. He's taken on the golden complexion of Srimati Radharani and her mood, you see. Namaha, I offer my obeisances. So this verse really defines Lord Chaitanya very nicely and gives us a clue about what his main mission is. His main mission is twofold. As I mentioned, he is Krishna himself in the mood of Radharani and wanting to taste that exquisite mellow of Radharani's relationship with Krishna, which he especially showed in the latter part of his manifestation when he stayed at Jagannath Puri for 12 years, and he was with some very intimate associates like Ramananda Roy, Sarup Damodar, and others, who were singing songs and helping him to experience this inner mellows that he had. But earlier than that, he went traveling all over India. He went to South India, went up in the north, he went to Vrindavan, and he was able to convert anyone to Krishna consciousness. Them died in the world Mayavadis. The Mayavadis are followers of Shankaracharya, who took the Vedanta Sutra and he get an impersonal interpretation of it. So that one is convinced that the ultimate reality is this Brahman I mentioned, without variety. In Prabhupada's pranam mantra that he wrote, because we didn't know anything, he says, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Desha Tarine. Nirvishesha means no details, no variety, no variegatedness. That's the Brahman. That's the Brahman. Now, for those you're here, you're interested in bhakti. Is that Brahman trying to merge into the Brahman is just hellish, right? There's a verse, Kaival Yang Nadakayate, because there's no bhakti, there's no Krishna, there's no you. There's just you and I am that I am. You're not doing anything. You have no senses. It's not a state. What's the great advantage? No more birth, death, old age, and disease. But that's a negative thing. In other words, to not be, that's great. I won't have to suffer anymore. But that's not real life. The real life is this exchange of love. Prabhupada mentions in the Nectar Devotion. Even on this plane, isn't that what makes the world go round? Wasn't there a song like that one time? Love makes the world go round. They got that right, but they don't know what real love is. So what is real love? That's also explained in the Nectar Devotion, of course, but in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chapter 4, the Adi Lila. I highly recommend the book. And he says very succinctly, Atmendriya priti vancha tare balikam. Krishnendriya priti itcha dare prem naam. So what's the difference between prema and kama? One is the reflection of the other. Kama is the reflection. So the desire to please one's own senses is kama. And really it is the source of our imprisonment in this world. Lord Krishna says very clearly in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. By the way, before I forget, let me get a little plug for the Bhagavad Gita class. I always forget. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I give a class on 7:15 to 8:15. I've been doing it since '89. And we're almost finished with the Gita. We're going to start again in a few, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, start all over again. And you can get it on YouTube. You don't have to check out here to the Pacific Beach. What does he look up? ISKCON San Diego Live? If you just look up ISKCON San Diego Live within YouTube, you'll see. And then you can see kirtans, whatever's there. Morning classes. Maharaj gave a wonderful class this morning, as he always does. You can always. So, Krishna talks about this karma in the Bhagavad Gita, how this is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. In other words, karma is not. It says right in the Gita, karma is nothing but prema that has been adulterated, kind of think of it, curled in contact with this material world. Our natural state is to take our pleasure from giving Krishna pleasure. Just like a mother's natural state, who has a, say, 6-month-old baby, her real source of pleasure is making sure that her child is happy. If the child is happy and healthy and smiles with a little toothless smile, the mother's day is made, isn't it? She doesn't want anything from the child, just that to be happy and healthy. So that's a reflection of it. That's the closest thing, Prabhupada said, to selfless love in this world. You can see it. So, we're part and parcel of Krishna. This is a very important philosophical point. That's why it's a science. Krishna says, 15th chapter, Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Every living entity, not just in human form, every living soul is my part and parcel, eternally. Now what does that mean? That means that we have Krishna's qualities in a minute degree, and that we're tied to him. And just like Prabhupada talks about watering the root here, that if we try to please Krishna, and how can we do that? Well, we learn that from the spiritual master, from the experienced devotees. Just hearing Bhagavad Gita or chanting Hare Krishna. It's easy. Now, to perfect the process requires discipline and dedication. But to begin the process just requires a little bit of open-mindedness and you're willing to experiment. So that process to turn our material desire into spiritual desire. I like this word sublimate. To sublimate. It's a psychological term, but it really should be. We really should make it our own, because it means to make what is mundane sublime. And that very desire, just like we all have a desire to eat nice food, right? So Prabhupada, being very wise, he began the movement in 26th Avenue. The Sunday feast was a very important part of it. In fact, every day they had a little prasadam, because everybody likes to have nice food. And he taught them, and his cooking was out of this world, literally. He cooked the first feast. Can you imagine it? In 26th Avenue, Sunday feast. And everyone who tasted it came back again next week. The whole idea is that, and if you come into the association, what are you going to hear? The holy name. You'll be chanting. You'll hear the Bhagavad Gita spoken by a great devotee. And so Krishna is reaching out to us. The whole idea is that he wants us to come back. He never abandons us. He's with us right now in our heart as a super soul. And he's trying to get through and teach us, but for many millions of births, we're so stubborn we won't hear him. Two birds in the tree. So how do we hear that super soul? From outside. From books like Bhagavad Gita as it is, and all the books Prabhupada wrote, and from the great personalities like Srila Prabhupada. Those who are preaching, who are living Krishna's message and teaching it, they can impart faith in the message, and the seed of devotion is planted. So that's how this great commandment can actually come to be within society. That was Lord Chaitanya's desire, and it was prediction that his name will be chanted throughout the world in every town and village. And Srila Prabhupada, impossibly to try to go back to when he was getting on that boat, who could possibly predict that it would be a grand success that it really was? Even Prabhupada had doubts. When he came to America, he was planning to stay for 2 months, and after the 2 months were up, he renewed the visa, and then even, it was getting so difficult, he wasn't making headway in early '66, and he got robbed, and so he would go down to the pier and look at the same Jaladuta company and see when's the next boat going for India. And after he did it several times, the clerk there said, Swami, you keep coming, but you never actually get a ticket to go back. He just couldn't give, he wouldn't give up. He was so surrendered to his own spiritual master, who told him to preach and spread this message. You know. So we're all here because of Srila Prabhupada's determination, and this is exactly what that second part of this commandment is: love thy neighbor as yourself. And that love, real love, is manifested in trying to give the knowledge that you've benefited from. It really works when you're practicing and you're experiencing the benefits. You say, oh, this is so wonderful. And let me try to give it to someone else, give it to my family, or give it to whoever is, receptive. So that's the Sankirtan movement, and especially this time of year, as many of you are aware, devotees make a special effort to distribute books. And we've had, I could say, a real renaissance here. We have some very wonderful devotees who come since the COVID happened. Somehow there's a little silver lining to the COVID cloud. So this Christmas marathon, or Prabhupada marathon, San Diego is right up there, in America, doing very nicely. We have some very dedicated boys, and of course, Krishna sent one of the primary book distributors in the whole world to live here. His name is Vijay. He's probably deeply taking rest now. He usually takes rest about 7:15, gets up at 1 o'clock in the morning, he studies Prabhupada's books, chants all his rounds, attends the program, and then goes out and distributes books very, very wonderfully. And he has others who are following him. He's training. So this is really taking Lord Chaitanya's mission and Srila Prabhupada's mission and Bhaktisiddhanta's mission to heart, and dedicated his life. He's been doing this since 1978, very faithfully. So we're very fortunate to have his association. So I just wanted to focus on this, how can, all right, love your God with all thy mind, all thy heart. Well, how can you love someone when you don't know their actual name, their form, qualities, and activities or pastimes? I mean, even on the mundane plane, how do you get interested in somebody? Well, you see them, that's a big part of it. But then, there's some talking, there's, the qualities. There's 4 aspects to any personality: name, form, qualities, and activities or pastimes. So if you don't know any of those, you can think that you're loving, but it's not real love. Love means, again, that you're trying to please Krishna's senses. That you're interested in that. Just like you come here and just to see the deities with appreciation. Krishna appreciates that. I heard lecture Prabhupada talked about the Bombay temple. There's a wonderful book that Giriraj Swami wrote, one of our main leaders, is from historic personality who very much helped Srila Prabhupada build a temple in Bombay, in Juhu, against all odds, one of these projects. And they were literally physically attacked by the police, and they didn't give up. And so Prabhupada said, I listen to a lecture every morning, and some of them are in Bombay. He's talking about the whole thing. If people, the devotees, especially the pujaris who are dressing and taking care of the deities, have responsibility to make the deities look as beautiful as possible. They're already beautiful. They're infinitely beautiful. But by the beautiful dressing, the flowers, the scents, all these things, and anyone who just walks in the temple, just out of curiosity, oh, they're so attractive. That's Krishna. From inside, you're getting an attraction there. So that's this is how Krishna reaches out. Primarily in this age, of course, through the holy name, making that available, but also through, of course, his devotees. Great devotees like Srila Prabhupada, who would translate and make these wonderful, essential books available to us, that were completely unavailable because they were locked away in Bengali or Sanskrit language. So that's there, and through these temples that Prabhupada established all over the world, and is still being sustained, because here is an environment. You walk in this temple, and there's nothing mundane. Everything is reminding you of Krishna. The pictures on the wall, of course, the deities, the prasadam, the incense, the devotees, right? So you'll think of Krishna. And if you're a little receptive, you'll be attracted to, well, let me get a book. Let me at least get a pamphlet, something that I can find out more. So Krishna is reaching out to us through this, and he's trying to help us from within. So we should take advantage of it. This is really the greatest treasure that there is in the world. is the facility to practice devotional service seriously if we want to. And we should want to, because this will make us happy, and we'll become agents for Krishna for spreading the knowledge throughout the world and spreading the holy name. And the more we do that, the more Krishna will give us bliss from within our heart. He says that in the Bhagavad Gita. Nacha tasma manusheshu kasame priyakritama. For those who are teaching this Bhagavad Gita to my devotees, there's no one more dear to me. And Prabhupada makes it clear in the purport that it's not, sometimes we teach to people who are not really, in other words, we make it available to everybody. Krishna says, no, you have to be very austere, to get this. But Prabhupada said sometimes the devotees are more merciful than Krishna. He says that in the purport. Of course, Krishna is happy with that. So we should make this a determination that we'll learn more about this process. Nectar devotion is available everywhere. We have in the bookstore. You can get it online, and begin seriously taking up the process more seriously of chanting regularly, of learning what the do's and don'ts. Any discipline, anything you want to do in life. You want to become a violin player, there are do's and don'ts. You have to go to an acharya, you have to go to a teacher, right? Someone who could teach. And then he said, no, hold it this way, do this way, And if you listen and you actually try to do it, then you can make progress. So the things you should not do, and of course things that you should do if you want to advance in any, and get from point A to point B and point C. So the same thing is true for spiritual life. There's a tried and true process encompassing do's and don'ts. It's called surrender. Anukulyena sankalpa pratikulya savarjanam. To accept those things favorable for devotional service and reject those things that are unfavorable. The problem is that some of the things that are unfavorable we're really attached to. And some of the things that are very favorable, I don't see how I can do that. And so this is where our determination comes in. But if we read about the great benefits, both for us and for the world at large, that can accrue if we become part of serious about Krishna consciousness, then we should take the step to do that and become serious. So we have a little time for questions or discussion. Just to again, the theme was the great commandment of Jesus. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And the second law is love your neighbor as yourself. And Krishna consciousness really embodies this commandment. And we try to follow it carefully. Any comments or questions? I can regale you with a few poems. Okay, yes, please. Oh, do we have a mic? Hold on here, so everyone can hear, because we have some people online. Maybe.
I would love to hear more about the difference between prema and kama. And there's one point on the point of kama. There's a verse in the Gita in which Krishna says, Kama asmi aham.
Yes.
I am kama. I am that material desire, that lustful desire.
Yes.
Kama asmi aham. So how does that fit in with,
Well, yeah, it helps if you know the first part of the verse. Dharma varudha buddheshu kamasmi bharatarsh. He's saying, I am sex life, kama, which is not against the religious principles. In other words, we're all sitting here and we all had parents, right? So, and Prabhupada makes the point, even the great acharyas, he mentions Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, they all had parents, so the sex life was there. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I just happened to be reading a part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya severely chastises one of his sannyasi followers because he just looked lustfully for a moment at a young woman. And he wouldn't let him see him again, to the point where he committed suicide. But he was not degraded. He was still in his spiritual body. There's a whole pastime of it. But then it describes that, but Lord Chaitanya also had many householder disciples. And when he heard that one of the householders' wives was pregnant, he said, "Oh, you should give him this name, this auspicious name." In other words, he was very approving of that. So the point is that this desire is also possible to be dovetailed in Krishna's service. There's a whole means of doing that. Prabhupada had many disciples who were householders, and there was something called the Gurukul. They had children, and he wanted them to be raised and trained in a devotional life. And so that's allowed. The problem is that the other part, when Krishna speaks of that in the 3rd chapter, that's in the 7th chapter. Dharma viruddha buddheshu kamosmi bharatarshava. He's saying, I'm the light of the sun and the moon, I'm the taste of water. And then so in the let's see, in the 3rd chapter at the end, Arjuna wants to know. This is a very great question that we can all. What is it that impels us to do things that we know we shouldn't do? That this almost takes us over. So this is where Krishna he says, "Kama esha, krodha esha, rajoganu samudbhavaha, mahashano mahapapma vidyena miha vaidinam." Vaidinam means enemy. So they're on a battlefield between the two armies, right? Very dramatic. So, but Krishna is saying basically, see all those soldiers on the other side? They're not your real enemy. The real enemy is lust, is material desire. Now, in the 2nd chapter, Krishna has a wonderful couple of verses describing how this process works. So he says, "Dhyayato vishayan pungsas sangasteshu bhajayate, sangat sanjayate kama krodho vijayate." He says, because we're in the material world, because we rebelled against Krishna, therefore we're prone to become entangled and bewildered and enchanted by the dualities of this world. So when we when we meditate on the objects of the senses, of which the opposite sex is perhaps the most prominent, but there's an infinite variety, then attachment becomes. I like to point out this is the science of advertising, how they try to get you to buy something. They present it in such a way where they may just have a few seconds of your attention, but it's enough to plant the seed of desire. That when you want that particular item, you'll buy their thing, and you don't even know why, because they. So by meditating on the objects of senses, attachment develops, and if you let that attachment go, then that turns into kama. Sangat sanjayate kama. And then when the kama is frustrated, because it's practically limitless, and you must be frustrated, then anger arises. And then from anger, it could be complete bewilderment of mind, sammoha. Sammoha smriti vibhrama, and you lose your memory, and smriti brangshat buddhi nasho. Your intelligence can be destroyed, and then you're finished. So this all comes from allowing material desire to go. Just like the perfect example is addiction. Addiction. It can be addiction to some drug or alcohol, but it can be addiction to gambling. It can be addiction to pornography. Anything that gives you a real shot. They even measured in the brain. The same chemistry that's going on with cocaine is happening with these other stimulants too. So then you're out of control. You can't control it. Even tobacco can be like that. Prabhupada knew that. He didn't insist, absolutely quit it, cold turkey, we say. You have to try, but slowly. So we've been going around and around for millions of births, developing these addictions, these attractions. So it's not easy to overcome them. But Krishna consciousness is so powerful. Krishna is all attractive. That's what his name means. If you learn, you're able to see the deities and engage in Sankirtan. The holy name is our salvation. This is for the age. You get serious about chanting, that will draw your heart away from matter. The famous verse, just to share with you, this is quoted twice in the purports in the Bhagavad Gita. Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya was a great devotee in his youth, early youth. And then he was so brilliant that he challenged the court Brahmin in I forget the name of the king. Yeah. And to a debate, because he had been defeating everybody. So everybody says, who is this upstart? There's no way he's going to, this 14-year-old kid, So the king, being very magnanimous, said, if you win the debate, you can have half my kingdom. So I forget all the details, but he had this very clever question. And he completely stumped the pundit. He won the debate, and he got the kingdom. So now he's a young guy growing up, and he's got all his wealth and everything. So he indulged. But then he had all his friends in the Gurukul, who he was a devotee. So one day, one of them came back and said, let's go for a walk. Sure, let's go for a walk. Beautiful gardens he had, walking. And as they're walking, the friend was reminding him of all these nectar shlokas, like what Rupa Goswami would write. Pullindi Vidakandamindavadanambarhavatang Sapriyam. Krishna is the color of a new blue lotus flower. And it's all these descriptions, you know. So they're remembering them, and he's getting enlivened, and he's remembering his own. And they just kept walking. He went right out of the kingdom. And he took sannyas right from there. So then he became acharya. Then he's Yamunacharya. So at one point he wrote a wonderful book called Stotra Ratna, which Prabhupada would quote sometimes. But this particular verse, I don't know if it's the Stotra Ratna or not. He says, Yadavadimama Chaita Krishna Pada Davinde Nabanamana Sadhaman Yuditam Rantamasi Tadavadibadanadi Sangame Smayamane Bhavati Mukambikaru Sishti Nishtivanancha. So as a king, you have so much facility for sense gratification. So he says, but now, ever since I've been tasting this rasa, you talked about rasa, we're back to the mellow, of serving Krishna's lotus feet at every moment, then whenever those memories intrude on my brain, you know, he says, oh, you know, his lips curl in distaste and he spits at the thought. Whereas, you know, an ordinary person would, you get into it and get all, you know, attracted. So this is a perfect example. And even we find, you know, in this movement, so many devotees were able to follow these principles for years because regularity and chanting and hearing and doing the sadhana, and you're able to sublimate the kama back in, at least toward prema. So we should take advantage of that, because that's the binding force here. Our attractions for the material world and our lack of attraction for Krishna. So we should take advantage. Radha Giridhari is so mesmerizing, isn't it? So beautiful. Someone else? Discussion? Are we too late? No. Okay, one little poem. So, do you have something?
I was just going to say, before we move to the kirtan, I just had an announcement.
Okay, go ahead.
But
all right.
after you're done.
So this is a verse originally written 17 years ago for a calendar, because I work with the BBT, so every year we produce this calendar. So this one year, Surya Prabhu, bless his soul, he just left his body. But I was working with him, and he said, well, this year, why don't we produce a calendar that doesn't hang on the wall, but sits on the desk also. So this was the second calendar. So I said, okay, maybe I'll just write some poems for the pictures. So many of you have seen this picture. It's a picture of the Julin Yatra, where Radha and Krishna are swinging, and very idyllically, they're out, the Yamuna River's in the background, and they're swinging very blissfully, you know. So that's what the background of this is. So let's go back. Let's see if we can go to Vrindavan. It says, where blooming flowers spread their sweet perfumes, where clear Yamuna flows and songbirds sing, where all the land a lovely light illumes, Shri Radha and Shri Krishna gently swing. This idol of their love in Braja's, bowers, forever charms their dearest devotees, whose heart Shri Krishna's sweetness overpowers, obscuring his prodigious potencies. Whatever in this world we know as love is just a shadow of the love they feel. The wise aspire to learn the secrets of devotion's path and taste that love ideal. And those secrets are in this book. So everyone should go home with one of them. Hare Krishna. Okay, we have an announcement from Balaram Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So yeah, thank you very much to Dravida Prabhu.
Jai.
So Dravida Prabhu was just, you could set it there, thank you. So Dravida Prabhu was just speaking about this particular book, the Nectar Devotion. So I just have a question for all of you, and we need a honest raise of hands. So
don't lie in front of the deity.
Yeah. So who does not have this book? Maybe you could raise your hands a little higher. Okay. So can you keep your hands raised? Here, a soul, can you come and distribute? So just keep your hands raised so they know who they're targeting here, in a good way targeting.
But you're not even telling the price.
Well, anyways, that would go. So if you just keep your hands raised, please. So this is a great book. It's beyond great. It's, as Dravida Prabhu is saying, like here it says on the cover, The Complete Science of Bhakti Yoga. So it's amazing, absolutely amazing. All right, I think there's a few more over here. Right here. Okay, so now everybody has this great book in their hand, or
And the rest of them have it at home.
yeah. So you could keep this book. You could take it home, put it on your shelf, read it. And if you like, you could give a donation. If you want, if you can, you can give a donation. And if not, just take it. So it's, yeah. All right. So some nectar devotions went out. All right.
There you go. Yeah, just one. Thank you, Balaram.
Like,
I think the idea is many books have been sponsored.
yes.
Yeah, so if you really can't afford to make a donation, you can still keep it.
And
Yes,
also,
yeah.
also, if somebody already has, like many of you said you had them, if you like, you could take. There's a few here. You could take one, give it to somebody, or drop it off in a. What do you call? What are those? Book.
Oh,
What do they call library? Yeah, little libraries. I know there's some little libraries around somewhere, so you could take these and do that. That'd be nice.
And just one final word about the nectar of devotion. And Rupa Goswami is super genius the way he presents it. And right at the beginning, just like I talked about advertising, so he wants to attract you to keep reading the book. So right at the beginning, he gives 6 or 8 benefits of practicing Bhakti Yoga. First one is all your miseries will be solved, and the next is you'll be, in an ocean of bliss. In other words, unlimited pleasure like that. So that he's giving that at the beginning, just like an advertiser, try to attract your attention. So what could be more attractive, more important than it? So take advantage of it and enjoy it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now, if everybody